Welcome to Silence, where we explore the alchemy of disciplines, practices, and beliefs that get us to our best thinking, insights, and creativity. Now, on to the show. All right, Jennifer, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Rob. I'm honored to be asked.
Well, we were just talking about how you listen to a lot of podcasts. What's one or two favorites?
Gosh, what genre are you interested in? I love celebrity interviews, to be honest. It's one of my favorites. I love the Dax Shepard Armchair Expert podcast.
A lot of people love that one.
I love the Holy Post podcast and the Good Faith podcast.
What's Holy Post?
Oh, it's one of my favorites. So Holy Post is thoughtful Christians discussing faith and politics in a way that they challenge each other. It shows the nuance of how Christians can come to issues of the day and come out with different perspectives. So it's something I really like to listen to when the media paints Christians as very black and white. They sort of live in the gray, and I love the thoughtful discussions on that podcast. Some celebrity memoir podcasts. I mean, I'm all over the board. This American Life is classic. So,
well, you're known for like how much content you consume, and that you consume good content. So, I went away for a few days last week, and I counted up, and I think I probably listened to 25 or 30 hours of content. I was kind of by myself out in nature.
Awesome.
And it was great to synthesize.
What were your favorites? What are your go-tos?
You know, I bounce between like spirituality and faith. Some parenting podcasts, particularly related to ADHD.
Okay.
AI, business, politics, so I would just jump from one to one. And it was fun seeing, the crossover of like trends and like thread lines through the different ones.
Yes. I love the news. I've got a couple go-tos for news.
Yeah.
A couple for analyzing the news. A couple that are just total garbage, trash, like pop culture.
Yeah. You got to have those too.
You got to have those. Yeah.
Well, hey, let's back up. Again, thanks for joining today. Tell us just a minute about who you are, background, however you want to define yourself.
Sure.
But give a little bit of an intro or bio.
My name is Jennifer Hocutt. I am a proud mother of 3, wife of 1. I've got 3 girls. They are 6, 9, and 12. And my husband, John, and I work for Aviana Healthcare. I do leadership development. And then I lead our learning and development team. I would say my favorite things to do when I'm not working would be spending time with my family, of course, and then, like you said, a long walk, probably by myself, listening to something.
Something good.
Something good. Yes.
Well, I think there's magic in that. I mean, as you know, I'm doing this to explore a bit of the alchemy of thinking, insight, creativity, with this hypothesis that the world needs better thinking. And frankly, with this onslaught of AI, I am thinking about this of if thinking and work's distributed on a bell curve, it's at least for the creative industry, which I'm in. And you're in an adjacent space, I think, of leadership development, but that AI may kind of come for that middle of the bell curve. And so how can we push to that front side, And so so less about what we think, but the practices, beliefs, habits, philosophies of what produces our best thinking.
I love it.
And creativity. And, it's been fun. I think a lot of these conversations have then found their way into just general human flourishing, which is probably the other side of the coin of great thinking. But with that, where in your life have you experienced your best thinking creativity? And sorry, what made me think about this was walking and movement and then like being inspired, I think are two great ingredients.
100%. So, I mean, I feel like my deathbed wisdom to my children will be go for a walk.
Yeah.
And to me, exercise is like not the driver for me. It's
right.
being outside. And I swear that is where I have like flashes.
Yeah.
So I'll be stuck on a problem at work. I mean, this happened yesterday. I was stuck on a problem at work, sort of wrestling with something. I went outside, took a lap around my neighborhood, and right on my first right turn, it was like, oh, aha.
Yeah.
Something magic happens, I feel like, when you're moving and outside.
Yeah.
So I think that really helps the creative process for me, especially when it comes to problem solving, but then also just general like creativity. I don't know. It's something happens magically.
Yeah, it is. There's some magic in it. I think the outside thing's important. I think that's another piece. I just heard the quote the other day, and it was some great thinker we'd all know, but essentially disparaged any thinking that did not come when walking. They were such a deep believer. I mean, this was from, years past, like a while ago, but I think it was a he, but he said, any thinking or thoughts or ideas that were not derived during, or, not inspired during a walk wasn't any good. I thought that was really interesting.
Well, they say even when you're having conversations that they are better when you're
side by side
versus across from each other. And walking in motion like that, like it sort of neutralizes, especially if there's tension.
Yeah.
It neutralizes it, and then, I don't know. I think
I found that with my kids.
Yes.
That side by side versus like eye to eye, which it's easy to say, oh, let's go, eat dinner, whatever. But I don't know. It's like a more of a participatory energy versus not confrontational,
interrogation.
But
Yes.
So
yes.
I think there's something to that.
Totally. A car ride.
Yeah. Some of the best conversational time.
For sure.
Especially when you're getting to know somebody, like spouse, dating, a long car ride.
Definitely.
Well, are there other contexts, practices, like body or emotional habits that have helped?
Creativity?
Yeah, creativity or thinking.
So something I love to do is I really like to write. And
that's right. You are a great writer.
I don't know about
very funny too. Yeah.
But I started, I was a journaler for a long time, and then started a blog. When was that? I mean, it was a long time ago.
And what was it called?
Take the Day Off.
Yeah, that's right.
So I got the title when I was laid off from my public relations job, which was a little minor detour from really my life's work and passion of leadership development and communications and consulting. Took a little detour to public relations for a moment for an incredible company, but really just to move to Atlanta because I was about to be engaged. Fortunately, that worked out, but the public relations job did not. And I got laid off, and this was during, I guess it was 2008, 2009, last in, first out situation. Still was a gut punch though. Yeah. As like an achiever and a pleaser. And it was a humbling, hard day, but it was almost laughable as I was being let go. The leader of the company was like, you know what? You can just take the rest of the day off. And I was like, yeah.
Of course.
I'm not going to go finish that boring press release.
Right.
Like, I'm out of here, man. But so Take the Day Off was the name of my blog because I said if I had more time, I would start a blog. And suddenly I had a lot of time.
Yeah.
So I started a blog, I guess, that was probably 2009. And was very committed to it, or diligent at least in the beginning, and then have tapered off over the years. But it's always been like a creative outlet for me. And I think what I love about it is that there was never a desire to monetize it, even though that is kind of the direction blogs took. And maybe I missed the boat on not having those aspirations as I see these millionaires. But for me, it really was less about building an audience even, and more like just expressing myself.
Yeah.
So it was something about the actual process that I enjoyed of writing and then editing my own work and then putting it out there. And I loved when people would comment or share it or things like that. But really the joy for me was the process.
Yeah. I think that, well, first, I feel like every once in a while when you drop a new post, it's like a Christmas gift for all of us. You know, everybody's rushing to see it, and they really, truly are amazing and so funny. You are so witty. You've got a gift for that. I think you're hitting on something else, though, of this authenticity. And where I've been thinking about this more of late, of just incentives. Like, what do incentives create? And certainly we live and work in a capitalistic environment, which I think on the whole is a great, a great thing. But sometimes incentives can pervert things.
Right.
And particularly in the creative field. And so to say, hey, I wasn't worried about building an audience. I didn't need to monetize it. I'm really just doing it totally just to express. Yeah. And to be me. And there's power in that.
And to remember, a lot of it was like, I would write a lot when my children were infants and in that Groundhog Day life. But I always wondered, there was a tension where I was like, should I commit to doing this twice a week? Or should I try to, and putting parameters on it, and maybe that's, putting parameters on it almost felt like it limited it.
Yeah.
Since it was just for my own.
For you, yeah.
Yeah, kicks.
Yeah. Have you read Rubin's A Creative Act?
No, I have not.
Oh, you should.
Okay.
You'd love it. But he talks about the power of authenticity and finding that authentic voice.
And that's what it is. I feel like you can tell. We chatted about AI for a minute before we started recording, but that's where the disconnect is the authenticity and the creativity there.
Yeah. And even I think like mistakes and vulnerability.
Yes.
I mean, I hope that remains an advantage we have over AI.
Yeah.
I was talking to my team in my other domain the other day about this great example of the Graza olive oil. Are you familiar with this? Mm-hmm. Okay. So, startup olive oil company. It's like the cool squeeze bottles, great design. And it was, I think 2 Christmases ago, I read this article in the Wall Street Journal about how they had messed up on a bunch of shipments. They just got flooded as a new business, and they were too popular, and they didn't handle it. And so the CEO sat down to write this mea culpa, but it had errors in it, grammatical errors. It wasn't polished PR, corporate speak, but it was authentic. And that authenticity carried the day and just won over all these people that said, thanks for being honest. So human. Yeah, and human. Honest. And it wasn't uber polished. And so, of course, I do spend time in the professional creative realm. And so we try to think about and balance, how do we make something professional, but also not lose the authenticity?
Right. What do you think about, I was saying for my blog, I really enjoy it because no one was pressuring me. There were no deadlines. There wasn't an editor or an expectation. What do you think about parameters like that? Do you think they enhance creativity or inhibit it?
Yeah.
How does it work for you?
Yeah,
Maybe
this
it's
came
just
to
a
mind
personality thing.
When you were talking of, it's either Seth Godin or the gentleman who wrote The War of Art, and I'm now blanking on his name, but The War of Art's a famous. Mm-hmm. Have you read it?
No.
It's so good. But it talks all about creativity and creative work, and that it is work. You are inspired, but for writers, they almost have to commit to just sitting down and writing.
Right.
And without that discipline, sometimes the muses never come. And then I think it was Godin though that talked about you also have to ship. Now, obviously if you're not doing it for profit, maybe there's less of a bar. But I do think there's this important forcing function in that of like at some point
For sure.
it's like it may never be perfect and I've got to get it out. And yet to do it from the motivation of like pure expression and creativity and trying to be as authentic as I can and not twisting it to make more money or build audience. I think if you could balance those two things of doing it for yourself in your own voice and yet also feeling a little bit of pressure of like, hey, I got to ship. I got to get some stuff out.
Right.
And take that leap. You know, I talked about the other day with Gregory where we talked about how important vulnerability is to the creative process. And like at some point, you got to put it out there. So I don't know. I mean, did you feel that when you were hitting submit, you know, on the blog of like, I feel a little exposed here?
So one of I can say with a degree of certainty, the only post I ever had that probably went something close to viral was something I wrote about formula feeding. So you may or may not know this, but there's a lot of pressure to breastfeed.
Yeah.
And my experience in 1, 2, 3 children was very different. I felt a lot of pressure with my first and tried really hard to make it work, and it worked. You know, there wasn't anything biological, but I just didn't like it.
Yeah.
I hated it. And that felt like a not okay opinion to have. And I took a different approach with my middle child and kind of did a little combo feeding and really enjoyed her infancy so much more.
Yeah.
And then with my third child, I started feeding formula in the hospital, and it was delightful. But I felt like I wanted to share that message that there doesn't have to be a reason.
That's okay.
Yeah, that it's okay. And then I almost made a joke of it to say, here, my sister and I, we were formula fed.
Yeah.
And she's
turned out pretty well.
At least she did. I mean, she's an incredible dermatologist and marathon runner and never repeats a recipe and hosts dinner parties. I mean, mother of 4, does all the things. So it was almost kind of like, you know what? I don't even know if it matters as much as we think it does either way. Yeah. But all of this to say, putting that out there I was a little nervous about it because I don't want to make people feel bad who choose anything.
Right.
And I didn't want to come across as against breastfeeding or, stirring the pot on the controversy. But I'm like, here's my experience. Yeah. I don't think it matters either way as much as we think it does. And publish. And a couple sites picked it up. And it was almost like a relief to have it feel like that. But
that's a great example. And I think another points to another truth of, the vulnerability, taking risk. And it's like, that's what people want to hear. Mm-hmm. I think they want to know there's some risk in something creative.
Right.
And if not, it's kind of boring.
Exactly.
If probably half the people love you and half the people hate you, you're doing well.
For pleasing everybody.
Right.
That's boring.
Yeah. And in this age of, social media and everything online, I just, on the one hand, the internet allows anybody to express anything. So there's a beauty in that. But on the other hand, is it easier to all conform because there's this pressure of, you're seeing what everybody else is doing and you're just kind of copying that. And so I don't know. I mean, I haven't studied this, but pre-internet, is it where you have all these pockets of people that aren't necessarily connected. And so they're really coming up with different things, theories, innovations. Is the internet kind of making, the words slip in my mind, but just making it more same. Everything's the same. And so it's harder to take these risks.
I would almost think it's more polarizing just because we can create our own
we've certainly seen that.
echo chambers, right? Where we are not even agreeing on truth.
Yeah.
And that's been something that I've really been wrestling with lately, where I think in the old days, the good old days,
The good old days.
everybody agreed on the problem and came to it with different solutions.
Yeah.
And now I feel like we don't even agree on the problem.
Yeah.
You know, if I'm saying this is global warming, as an example,
Right.
like, you know, scientists say this is happening. Other people say, yeah, nah. So it's not like we can even solve that when we're not agreeing
Yeah.
that it is
Yeah.
an issue. And like that's a more extreme, salacious example, but I think there's a million of those out right now. And given sort of the echo chamber, that is created by the algorithm.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, you can just be in these different realities.
Yeah. Yeah. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and it was with I guess a former CIA person who worked there, but she talked about this concept of red teaming, where they'd send a group of people into isolation, like in a house or something, you know, kind of lock them up, so to speak, for a number of months. And all they could read, listen to, see was the thinking and kind of propaganda of the enemy force, so to speak.
Wow.
And then what would happen, then they did it so they could then, after some period of time, ask them questions about, well, how would the enemy think about this? But, you know, according to her, it's like the folks sometimes would become so indoctrinated that when they came out, they were distrusted maybe by their colleagues, or like there's some suspicion of like, did you cross over?
Right. Did it penetrate
Ideologically?
you?
Yeah. But it goes to your thing of like,
Yeah.
I've been thinking about that in these echo chambers, and we're all susceptible to them, you know, when you hear and see only who you agree with or whatever.
Right.
Hey, well, so let me jump
Sure.
back a couple to that great example of your post. Because something I've been thinking about is like, where are we all taking risk in our thinking, you know? And there's a part of me that says it feels like people take less risk now in their thinking. But agree or disagree, where do you feel like you're pushing the bounds like you did in that instant? Are there other places now, work or personal, you know, where you're actually either doing it or you're just like, hey, this is something I've been thinking about and it's kind of on the edge for me. Like, I don't know what I think about this, but I'm out there a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think something I've been, it's been on my mind, thanks to books I've read lately. Adam Grant. Are you an Adam Grant fan? Okay.
Yeah.
His book, Think Again.
Yeah, I haven't read that one yet.
Okay. It's
Somebody
so
recommended
good.
it.
I mean,
Okay.
for somebody who's thinking about thinking,
Okay.
it's a great one. But it's the intellectual humility that maybe I'm wrong. You know, like I think that is kind of countercultural.
Yeah.
And because I think we were raised, and in faith, even in faith, something that is, well, we don't know, but even a level of certainty. You're supposed to have a level of certainty in that, and then everything else. Like I just love his, again, like the humility there to say, this is what I think, this is what I believe, but maybe I'm wrong.
Right.
Where do I need to rethink? And to do that, I think you have to engage with people who have different experiences and different opinions. And I love this book on my children's shelf that is called We Were Wrong About the Dinosaurs. And it's just like, here's what we used to think, and here's how old we used to think the world was, or here's how we thought they got extinct, and now we know this. And it's the scientific method, right? Is we have a hypothesis, we test it, we explore it, we revisit it, we change it when we learn new information. And I like that almost feels better than trying to be right and certain and
Right.
the expert. I like that scientific kind of mindset and giving people the freedom to change their minds
Yeah.
and giving myself the freedom to change my mind
Yeah.
on things.
What a nugget. Is that what the whole book's about?
Yes, that's kind of the thesis, I would say. And then one more thing and it's been a while since I've read it, so forgive me, Adam Grant, if you're listening to this. That would be a dream.
Yeah. We hope.
But he says it's like there's preachers, there's prosecutors, and I'll think of the other one. Starts with a P. Politicians. So we come at, things, conversations, in one of those three modes. So when we come at it as a preacher, that's me with my deeply held beliefs, not wavering, trying to win you, basically, to this side.
Yeah. Persuade you.
That this is right and this is wrong. I'm trying to persuade you. With a politician, I'm trying to truly win. And
Right.
I might be a little more fluid in how
Right.
I'm going to do that.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
And then a prosecutor, I'm trying to prove you wrong.
Yeah.
So each of those have a dark side.
Right. Flat sides.
And flat sides.
Yeah.
So interesting to think, how am I approaching this conversation or this issue?
Yep.
Preacher, politician, prosecutor.
Yep. It makes me think we have this friend that I think you know too, but he's a industrial psychologist. So he talks about growth and development and in his model, or the model that he subscribes to, there's these 5 stages, and there's just a small percent of the population that gets to 5, to kind of level 5. And the difference, as I understand it, so real quick, 1 and 2 are like when you're young, and I won't hit on those. But 3 is you process the world from the outside in, and so you're always looking at like what other people are saying about you for validation and direction. Level 4 is you then kind of process the world inside out. Like you now have firmly held beliefs. You know what you think.
Right.
Which is where not everybody even makes it to 4.
Yeah.
I think there's probably some obvious examples of 3, because 3 is very like me versus you,
Yes.
But 4 is, hey, I now know what I think. But it's hard then to go to 5 because you have to have an opinion, know what you think, and it's self-authored, not authored from what other people think, but self-authored.
Right.
And then to move to 5, you then open back up your hand and say, I am self-authored. I'm not defined by what you think of me. I do have an opinion on this, and yet I'm open to being wrong and learning from what you may have to say. But it's different than 3, where it's like more of an insecurity and and that there's a lot of nuance in that I don't understand. But to your point of like, hey, I do have this opinion and belief, but I may be wrong. So
I love that.
Help me keep learning.
And that's falling upward. I think Richard Rohr,
Yeah.
I feel like that's what he's saying the second half is about.
Yeah.
And there's so much like grace in that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it makes for a probably kinder, richer society.
And more curious.
Yeah, more curious. Yeah. That's great. What about inspiration? Like, what's inspiring to you in life these days? Where are you finding inspiration?
Ooh, I don't know if I feel particularly inspired
right
now.
These middle years can be tough.
These middle years can be tough.
I mean, certainly probably the podcast you're listening to.
Yes, the podcast I'm listening to. I think at work, I work for a growing company, so there's always a new challenge.
Yeah.
Like this isn't a bank with a clear-cut
Right.
job description with hierarchy. I mean, we have all those things, but
Right.
it's much more my role, especially I have a little creative freedom to help teams within the organization understand their needs when it comes to learning and training and then leadership, of course. and then a little creativity on how to help them meet those needs.
Yeah.
So I feel inspired working somewhere where I fully believe in our mission. We're home health and hospice, very large company that serves medically fragile children all the way to geriatric hospice. We have a few other lines of business, but that's our main slice there. So I'm so invested in the mission and work with really bright people who believe in again, like
helping
our
people,
values and helping people. So I'm inspired that there's always work to do.
Yeah.
There's always work there.
And I would imagine the field of leadership and leadership development, it feels like it's like ever evolving. There's so much attention to it.
Totally. And everything you're talking, I mean, we're talking about here. That's why I love this work. And that's why I'm on the journey myself with leadership development. There's always something new. There's no finish line to being a leader. And there's always rethinking, repackaging how to teach and train leaders. One of my favorite things I've read lately, and I've got probably like you do, like a shelf full of business books, and most of them could be boiled down to like 2 pages,
That's a problem in society that we need to solve. Yeah.
But I'm like, I would like the Cliff Notes. But this book called Multipliers, Liz Weissman is the author, and it has really kind of just put a package around things that I have known to be true as I've worked with leaders and coached leaders and worked with teams, and packages it in a way that is so applicable and convicting and immediately actionable. Because there's a lot of leadership books that are like theory, and that's fine, but like, what am I going to do about this tomorrow? And Multipliers, and this is perfect for what we're talking about today. She says that the best leaders are the ones that she calls multipliers, who are able to amplify the intelligence of their team. So that as a leader, I have the ability, and she defines intelligence as like the ability to solve problems and make contributions. It's not IQ. This is something that can be grown. Learning resilience, things like that. Problem-solving ability. She says the best leaders are the ones that are able to ignite that in their teams. And the leaders she calls diminishers, intentionally or accidentally, like reduce that in their team. So how am I as a leader showing up in a way that brings out the best in my team, that calls people to something higher than they even knew they were capable of? That gives my team stretch challenges because, we rise to the occasion that we're challenged, right? Versus diminishing, like shutting down their contribution, not asking the right questions, thinking that I'm the only one that knows the answer.
So keep going on that. Yeah, how does she say to do it?
So she says the first step is identifying your accidental diminisher tendencies. So we all do these things, and these are a lot of times things that got you into your role. So being a perfectionist, right? Having a high standard.
Right.
I'm you write a lot. I'm sure you edit and redline the crap out of people's stuff. Like in what situations does that elevate? Or in what situations does my redlining diminish? Like, are people so afraid to fail and be redlined by me, literally or metaphorically, that they don't try new things, they don't take risks, or they don't use their own creative voice because they're like, I need it to be in Rob's voice, or this is how Rob would do it. So that's an example. We've got the rapid responder, diminishers who come in at the last minute or at any time and kind of, no, that's the rescuers. The rescuers, come in at the last minute and kind of pull the team back, or the person back from maybe making a mistake or failing. rapid responder, you're CC'd on an email with 4 other people, and you as a leader being the first to come in with a solution or answer the question, or how does that diminish my team?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Don't let them learn and grow.
Don't let them learn and grow. What are some of the optimists? Even optimism. How would optimism diminish if I'm not acknowledging like the challenge of what we're asking people
trying to make everything okay.
Yeah, everything's okay. It's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. Oh, you got this. It's fine. Don't worry about it. You got, have it by Friday.
Yeah. I could fall into that.
Oh, I mean, all of them. I think there's 9 accidental diminisher tendencies, and I see all of them in myself with my team. And I'm really trying to be more mindful of that.
Yeah.
And the solution, what you identify your tendencies is, how do I, instead of coming in with the answers, ask better questions?
Yeah.
How do I give people room to grow? Like stretch opportunities, that perfect level of challenge. We all want to be like, reach for that next bar, not where you feel like you're drowning. Because I felt like that before. That's not a good feeling, but that perfect level of challenge. How do I figure that out for my team? And then one of my favorite pieces that she talks about is identifying people's genius. Everybody has some unique strengths and smarts. So my role as a leader is to figure out what that is. Like, what makes you come alive? What do you naturally do well? What do you learn quickly? What's that thing that you lose track of time doing? How can we leverage this and build your role around it?
Yeah.
So I love that. And this book, it's so good, because I was giving a presentation about it a few weeks ago, and I practiced on my daughter because I was doing it in front of a group, and I hadn't, I was working through the slides. Well, did she? I don't know. But it was funny because she was getting picked up from spend the night with a friend, and the mom and I were talking about what we did for work, and Harper was like, I don't even know what she does. I'm like, okay, I'll show you. You sit down right here. You need to listen to this presentation.
Give you training.
So it was a win-win, because I was like, she needs to know what I do, and then also I need to practice. So I went through this multipliers presentation with her, and for her, the first thing I did, and for this group, I'm like, think of a leader who had a diminishing impact on you.
Yeah.
What did that leader do?
Yeah.
And for her, I was like, think of a teacher or a coach, because she didn't have a leader besides me.
Yeah. Right.
So I was like, think of a teacher or a coach. And she was able to apply this to teachers and coaches. So you see it, and that's what I love about the leadership development work, is like, it's personal, it's professional. I really think it's so true that it applies to a 12-year-old.
Yeah.
You see these things about, in this case, it was multipliers and diminishers, the coaches that brought out the best in you.
Yeah.
The coaches that made you question your talent, your instincts.
Yeah. And like name things for you.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about the importance of calling out what you see in somebody, like you said, and then saying, like, I think you'll be really good at this.
Yes.
There's real power in that.
Oh my gosh. And that's where people want to be. Like, it's a win-win.
Right.
If you can crack that code.
Well, I'm not surprised about your daughter, because Harper's like as sharp as they come. So I'd hire her if it was legal for work with me. But so a lot of thoughts. That was great. One, the thing about the right amount of challenge. I took a graduate course years ago. Can't remember what the name of it, but they talked about flow state.
That's, oh gosh.
And the person who discovered it or developed its name's too hard to say, but that was one of the key components, is just enough challenge, because if it's too much, you shut down.
Right.
But you need some.
Exactly.
And that can help get you into this flow state where you lose track of time and you're just.
That's like the magic.
Yeah, right.
Yes. What is that for you? I'm curious. Or what, like, as you look at your week,
Yeah.
What are those things that you're like really look forward to doing? You lose track of time doing. You feel like you're naturally, the momentum of the roller coaster is like in your favor.
Right. Well, I like creativity and thinking and strategy. Planning at that macro level, like synthesizing.
Yeah.
Like I so enjoyed last week when I was in this place to be able to listen to all this content. And I was out in nature, so there was no other stimulus.
Yeah.
I mean, other than the trees and birds. But, rather than having texts and tweets and phone calls and, a zillion screens open on your computer, I was listening to one thing.
Yeah.
And my mind would even drift when I was doing that and start connecting dots to other things I'd listened to.
Yeah.
So it was like just enough stimulus, but it wasn't too much. And my mind could calm down and got clear. And I love that. When I can just, it's like things start appearing, connections. So I love that. And then I love people, probably to my team's chagrin sometimes they got things to do, but to talk, to connect and talk and about work or personal, but I enjoy that.
Yeah.
I enjoy that. Two other things came to mind. One, Robert Greene, that famous author who's written some of these big tomes on leadership and mastery and other things. But I was listening to something with him, and he said similar to Reuben with authenticity, but Robert was saying there's something almost odd or peculiar about every person, and like you need to find that, and that's one of your special things, to bring that forward. Like it's okay, to be that and to find that. And I heard you saying that in there.
Yeah.
And then the third thing that jumped to mind was that same industrial psychologist saying, this is maybe 5 years ago, he said, hey, the thing that got you to where you are today is going to become your chief obstacle in the second half of life if you can't figure out how to transcend it.
Oh, I like
and so for me, it was like perfection control. So high degree of control and perfection or perfectionistic tendencies, helped get me to where I am.
For sure.
But if I can't start letting my grip go on those things, like I'm going to alienate all the people around me. Nobody wants to be with me. And it's like, oh my gosh, it's just this weird, the thing that helped get you there is now you're
I think there's a business
chief
book.
opponent.
I have not read it. I've only respected the title, but it's called What Got You Here Won't Get You There.
There you go.
It's exactly that.
And like, why is that? Why is that the way life works?
I know.
I mean, like you were talking about falling upward, this idea of, I think about like climbing the mountain on the first half and you're descending the second half. And that you've got to let go of a lot of the things you held tightly on to successfully navigate that second half. And is it Arthur Brooks, Strength to Strength?
Yes.
So I feel like there's those ideas in that of you got to let go of, because there's things you're really good at as a younger person and you're not good at those anymore. But there's a different set of things you can be good at as an older person. But if you can't make that transition, you get frustrated and less productive.
And Brooks talks about, I think it's a lot about clinging to your identity as your work.
Yeah.
Was a lot of that. And how do you, that is not your identity, where do you go? How do you define yourself if not for that? And it's funny, our friends, and I don't think of as their jobs. And maybe we're lucky in that way, but certainly it will be a challenge.
Yeah. So push in a little bit, like where are you feeling that as you move into the second half of life?
Easy. I'm not quite second half yet, hopefully.
Well, yeah. Sorry. I didn't mean to date you, but I don't know. But as we move into a different season of life, are there ways where you feel like, gosh, this is a part of my identity I've held and now it's changing and that's hard to let go of or change with, or?
I don't know. I just feel like the older I get, the more free I feel to be myself.
Yeah.
Would you feel like that?
I think that gets to what I'm asking, I think, of like you're letting go of things.
Of feeling like I had to be a certain way.
Right.
For better or for worse.
Yeah.
Kind of like, this is me.
Yeah.
And discovering who that is. Like, I feel like that's kind of the journey.
And how are you discovering that?
You know, I think that's something I've been in tune with for a while. I know a lot of women kind of turn that off during their baby making early child years.
Right.
And then once they have a little more freedom, they're like, whoa, 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 who am I?
Yeah.
What do I even like to do? If I had a day to myself, how would I even spend it? I might have the opposite problem. I tried to never let that be my story. I mean, Rob, it's so funny. I remember watching Oprah at 4 o'clock when I was way too young to be watching Oprah, but it was on after school.
Yeah.
And our housekeeper and I, we would sit there and watch Oprah, and it was incredible. But I remember they always did these makeovers for these women who just lost themselves. And that was like the story of these women who just
lost their identity
and faded into the background and didn't know themselves and didn't care for themselves. And it wasn't really about looks as much as it was just like the whole thing. And I remember being 14, 13, seeing that, being like, no.
You made a pact with yourself.
I'm like, that will not
Won't
happen.
be me.
Yeah. So I feel like I have always, I mean, and there's seasons and phases, but just tried to remember that I am a mom and a wife and a person.
Yeah.
And to pursue my interests and curiosities. And fortunately, these aren't like expensive hobbies or things that take me far away from the family. Truly, like I said, give me like 90 minutes and a couple miles and my headphones, and I feel like restored.
Hey, and how did you figure out that formula? Because you are kind of known for this. You know, people see you walking on these epical walks with your visor, being so smart about the sun. But, you know, the walks and the podcasts, and it's funny. I feel like that's almost a little bit part of your brand. But then there's this output of like, oh, Jennifer's so sharp and she's so creative and she's so thoughtful. And so I don't know if we ever sit there and like put it all together, but we see you walk, move, listen, learn.
Yeah.
And then we know you as this person who is super sharp, productive, engaged, active, creative. But I'm curious, like how'd you get to the walking, listening rhythm?
I was probably the first person ever to have iPod.
You bought number one?
Yes, I bought
in
the
front of the
first
store.
one.
Yeah.
And I remember listening on my way, driving home from Vanderbilt to NPR. I was early on the NPR train, but listening to This American Life.
Yeah.
Like the radio stories. And it probably predates to my Teddy Ruxpin. Like I just loved being told stories and listening, and got the iPod, did that. So that, I mean, I remember walking around during high school with friends. I still like walking with a friend. Don't always have to be by myself, but iPod.
And so was the walking just the method of how can I find space to listen?
How can I find space to listen? And I like I can run. I'm capable of running. But to me, again, it's not like the exercise. That makes it something different. And the running, no. This is like my time of peace, and I don't know. I just love it so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we haven't talked about faith a lot. But it's like what Jesus did. He'd go up on to pray and have silence and solitude.
Yeah. That's what I'm not good at, though, is silence.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about that. Obviously, the show is called Silence.
I know, and this is where you'll probably stop recording and
no, it's okay. It's okay. I've had some people say like, I'm not good at this, and nobody's good at this.
So here's my challenge. You know, Strengths Finder, like Gallup, Clifton, strengths. You get your top 5 strengths. One of my strengths is input. So that is my God-given.
Giving input?
No, getting it.
Getting input. Okay.
Getting it.
Right.
So it's my wiring that is.
I wonder if I have that.
I swear it's like kind of an insatiable, truly. Like all their strengths have flat sides, but it's a curiosity and like a hunger to know more.
Yeah.
And this translates to me really never being in silence.
Yeah.
Because if the house is empty and I'm making breakfast, I have the news on or the Daily Show, honestly. I watch the Daily Show while I'm eating my breakfast.
Yeah.
That's on in the background. And then when I'm in the car, listening to something.
Yeah.
And usually when I'm on a walk too, your brain is incredible. I listen to podcasts at like 2 times the speed.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
sounds
you
like,
are a fast listener. I knew that
chipmunks.
about you.
When my family gets in the car, they're like, "You are crazy." But your brain, I swear, it like calibrates,
Yeah.
and you're only focusing on
One thing.
one thing. Yeah, so you can take in more. So all of this to say, this is one of my strengths from StrengthsFinder. It really is, and I see that, and that was something that, and I love that assessment because it put words to something I knew about myself, and I was like, that's me. That's so true. But the shadow side of that is I don't like silence. And it's not necessarily like an input for like productivity's sake, or there's no finish line here. It really is just the journey.
Mm-hmm.
But being quiet
It's tough.
is tough because my joy and my pleasure
Right.
is
Learning.
ingesting and
Is learning.
learning. So my version of silence is listening to music.
Yeah.
Like that is the closest I get because that almost becomes like white noise
Yeah.
for my brain to do other things.
Yeah.
But I know I'm sure people come in here and they say I wake up 2 hours before my kids and I journal and I'm quiet and I have my cup of tea before the house wakes up like that. Nope.
Yeah.
Maybe one day. I would never get up early. I'll
Right.
make that clear.
Yeah.
But
You're a night owl.
yes, I know, during when we hear sermons and they talk about that
Yeah.
practice, I'm like, eek.
Yeah. And why I'm largely with you, so this isn't critique, but why do you think that is?
I don't know. See, it made me feel better about myself that you went on your wilderness and had headphones in. I'm
Right.
like, okay, good. Because
Right.
this name of the podcast, really, I'm like, he's going to toss out this episode because it's not something I go towards.
Yeah. Okay, so let's explore
So
it for a minute.
convince. No, I want you to sell me on it.
Well, no,
What am I missing?
I deeply resonate with what you said. I wonder if input's one of
I
mine.
bet. I mean, do you have like 10 tabs open in your browser for articles that you want to read?
Yeah.
And things
I save all these
that you
articles. I don't
flag,
think I ever
save
go
them.
back and
Yeah.
find them, but
Same.
but it is. Gosh, I have such a complicated relationship here. Like, yeah, like I've started trying to force myself to take periods of silence, even though it's not my natural preferred.
Mm-hmm.
Like on the car ride home, I try to say, okay, I'm not listening to anything. Like I want to reset before I see my family.
Good.
But like yesterday, I found myself halfway home, I'm listening to a podcast. I'm like,
Yeah.
I got to turn it off.
Yeah.
So it's tough. But sometimes I feel like, I'm so tired of hearing noise. I do want to just sit in silence. I think I'm a little bit afraid of like the monkey brain running because the most silence I get is sleeping.
And even for me, I sleep with a white noise machine.
Yeah, I have a fan.
John,
Yeah, same thing.
Cranking.
Yeah, same thing. But I've had seasons of insomnia because my brain's running.
Same.
And so I'm like, I don't like that. But it needs to process all this stuff. And then like last week, I would force myself to take some breaks and periods of silence. So it doesn't come easy
No.
in the flow, but I've had seasons of life where I do periods of silence and it's wonderful,
Yeah.
but it's like the pain of going from our heavily inputted, fast-paced life to that place of, like there to that place of generative silence where it's like producing good things. It's like a hard middle road.
For sure. And
that's not what I don't want to. It's hard to get into that.
I get intimidated that it has to be that wake up 2 hours early and do this.
And a lot of times when I do, it's like I didn't get anything out of that.
Exactly.
But I will say
there's probably like a middle.
Yeah.
To take a lap around our neighborhood without my headphones.
Yeah.
And without a phone, would probably be a cool experiment.
I have noticed, I was talking about this with somebody else the other day, that when I've done it, even though sometimes I don't have the aha insight, I feel more settled like in my spirit.
That makes sense.
And I'll respond differently throughout the day.
I like that.
So it's like this, what I would call like the deeper magic. Like there's something deeper that shifted, even though I didn't come away with something intellectually, but my child will do something and I'll respond with more patience or peace. And I'm like, huh.
Who's that guy?
Yeah, where'd that come from? And I think it's that.
Yeah.
And I think I think it's also, if I can do it, getting my perspective right of like, all right, let's not make today all about me.
Yeah.
Because that's my default mode.
For sure.
But let's think like, how can I be thoughtful about other people? Slow down.
Right.
My identity, like where is my identity today? And then the other thing I'd say is I want to explore what silence means, because I think there's like audible silence. There's silence of the heart. There's silence of the mind. And I feel like that's like big in Buddhism, is like getting a calm mind. But
your mind.
even silence of like movement, which I guess people would call stillness, but it feels like the same thing. So like last week, even when I was having an input, I did feel a sense of silence and heart, perhaps. Well, and then even going from whatever we normally have, 8 inputs down to 1, I was moving the right direction, and I got benefit from it.
Yeah.
But it is a very rare thing in our life today.
Yeah, it is, and you have to fight for it, and that is absolutely not a fight I'm fighting.
Yeah.
And I'm wide open to trying to incorporate that more.
And I do think, I'm preaching to myself here, but there's a depth in us that wants to come out, but we have to get through the monkey mind stuff.
The noise.
We have to like let that drain out. And I've seen that happen if I wake up in the middle of the night and for an hour or so it's like spinning, thinking, whatever. And then it's like, okay, I've worked it through.
Yeah, totally.
And I think that can happen, but it's hard if I'm like, okay, 25 minutes, then I gotta go.
Yeah.
That's harder.
For sure.
But when you can get through that and all of a sudden your mind becomes calmer and clearer and you can hear a different voice that only appears when there's not a lot of noise.
Right. I'm inspired.
That's my goal.
Yeah, mine too.
That's my goal.
And again, I need to think of it like baby steps. Like this doesn't have to be.
That's right.
I mean, this can be 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think I'm even quiet for that long.
Yeah, our neighbor who sits in the office next door, I won't mention the name, but she was saying this summer she practiced, I think it was just 20 minutes, but did it religiously every morning, where she just either focused on a word or maybe an image. She's a person of faith, so that played in. And something that stuck with me, she said, it wasn't every day, but by the end, I think she really had opened something up where she was hearing and feeling the voice of love in a really powerful way.
Yeah. Because, I mean, how
but it took a while.
Hear it. Yeah.
But it took a while, I think.
You have podcasts in your ears going at 2 times the speed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that silence produced that for her.
I love that.
All right. So what about like going a little deeper, but like life's work? How do you think about that? Or do you think about that? Of like, what do I want my life's work to be? Am I doing it?
I feel really grateful now to be doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
For work. because I feel like it truly helps unlock, leadership development work, like to help people unlock their own strengths. I really believe like that is where our highest contribution is and where we will be the most fulfilled. How to help leaders understand that for their teams. So as one of, the benefits. So I feel very confident that this is a worthwhile pursuit.
Yeah.
Helping people lead others. And it's about not just like the tactical blocking and tackling, but care and connection. And like you say, you love having those water cooler chats with people.
Yeah.
Like you kind of have to teach some people that.
Yeah.
They forget and
how to be human.
How to be human. Yeah, that we're people working with people. So I'm grateful that my at least 9 to 5 is aligned with my values in that way.
And I imagine that same skill set, can be used with your kids,
And that's
friends,
exactly right. Like
husband, like you're pulling the best out of everybody.
Yeah, so I don't feel like it's that lives at the office and this is my home life. Like the leadership thoughts, and even when we're teaching teams how to learn and train, like this all flows into the home stuff. And all the books I read about leadership, I'm like, parenting, really thinking about, I was just working with the group on empathetic listening. And empathetic listening where, as a parent, when my daughter comes to me with an issue or a problem, I mean, what do? Try to solve it.
Yeah, I want to fix it.
I want to fix it. I want to solve it. Like I've been in 7th grade before. Here's A, B, C, D. Oh, you have a tough teacher? We'll try this. Oh,
done.
You haven't done this.
What else you got?
Yeah, what else you bringing on? And pausing to receive what they're saying, the complaint, the issue about the teacher, or the wishing they had this or that, or things, instead of immediately responding, just being like, it is so hard when that happens, or just like receiving the emotion and reflecting it back. That's what they want.
Yeah.
So to be able to teach leaders how to do that with their teams, instead of immediately solving the problem or fixing, like, let me hear how you're feeling. Let me engage with you in that emotion. Then maybe move to some coaching, maybe. But sometimes people just want to be heard.
Yeah.
So to be able to do that at work and help people hone that skill, and to remind myself about this when it comes to my children, my husband, I just love that there's so much crossover. Like I'm not working like Excel sheets during the day with numbers and then having to use a totally different skill set at night. It's like when I get better at the leadership stuff, I'm getting better at the
so much
stuff.
EQ.
Yeah, it's so much.
I was reading this article yesterday talking about how students should be thinking about AI and their futures. And there was this quote that said, essentially, like, AI has got IQ.
More than you ever will.
Right.
So,
but it doesn't have EQ.
Yes. I think
and
that is
as
right
I
on.
hear you talking, it's like, you're in a great field where it will be hard for, maybe one day, but it'll be hard for AI ever to, because you're dealing in humanness.
Yes. And one size does not fit all. And you know that from your children.
Yeah.
Like there is so much emotional intelligence required. What motivates one person, what motivates one child doesn't motivate another. What makes someone feel celebrated and seen and encouraged doesn't work for someone else. Like it's...
We're all unique.
Yeah, we are all unique.
What about transcendent values? Like which ones are you practicing most now in life?
Give me an example.
Well, or even eternal values, but like love, faith, hope, sacrifice, suffering, courage, truth, winsomeness. I don't know, these things that transcend cultures and time, but they're like always going to be
I would
wisdom,
say
important things.
love and hope.
Okay. Why those two?
Love, because that is what I think the Bible is crystal clear on. And that is what we are called to do. So for me, that one is, and doesn't mean it's easy at all, but I feel very strongly that is my role. And not to, even as a person of faith, like not to win you to God, or not to
prosecute you,
or preach you. Yeah. Proselytize. It's really like love. And trust that the Holy Spirit does everything else.
Yeah.
And then hope. I am an optimist. Thankfully.
Yeah. It's a good good quality.
Better way to be. For me. And so I am hopeful and have to assume the best. And that can be hard, I think, in times such as these, to assume the best about people, about their intentions, about the future. But I am choosing, and I think hope really has to be a choice, choosing to be hopeful.
Well, I think the value I'm experiencing the most is humility.
That sucks.
Yeah, it's not the one you want. It's like courage somewhere. It's like, you're kind of afraid to pray for humility.
Exactly,
it's like the most painful one to get.
For sure.
And I have prayed for it at times, but I probably pray for it less now because I feel like I'm filled with it. But I am committed to growth in life, and that does come through challenge and humility. And there's some dynamics, like relational dynamics in my life, that are humbling, namely with my kids.
Yeah.
And so, I just on a daily basis feel humbled.
Totally.
I'm just still, going back to that, like the up and down the mountain. Like I'm still too full of myself, not in like a braggadocious, like I'm bragging about but my ego, like my preferences, what I want, can still so often get in the way. And it makes me think about what you said about bringing out the best in others. Like you have to really dial back maybe your preferences, to put them first and what's best for them. And a little bit easier perhaps to do that with a colleague, but when it gets to the kids, it's like, I have pretty strong opinions on how I think you should, on everything, on how you should do life.
Oh yeah.
And rightfully so, that I'm, older, presumably a little wiser. And yet, how much of this is baggage or my story from growing up and the good and the bad that I'm now layering on to my child, and how much of that's getting in the way of
who they are.
Yeah, who they are. But then finding that balance of like, well, I actually don't believe in just total, like whatever you want. I do think there needs to be some structure and direction, but it comes back to that control and perfection help get me where I am, and now they're becoming a big obstacle if I can't get past them or put them in their place.
More open-handedness. And with kids too, it's like, am I a sculptor?
Right.
Is that my role? or am I an archaeologist?
Yeah.
Kind of uncovering what's there, gently kind of brushing the dust away.
Yeah, gently.
Helping them become, or am I carving them into, and maybe it's something in between. But that's where the humility comes into, to be like, and it happens at home all the time and at work all the time.
Yeah.
Just realizing I've got an idea of how this should go. Is that the best way? I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like the more I learn, the more I realize I have a lot to learn.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yes. And feeling like I'm going at some core wiring.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked about with some friends that of just, there's like a little bit of a sense of like, I'm kind of tired of myself. I mean, meaning like I'm tired of the way I always view the world. Can we change this up a little bit?
Exactly.
See if there's something new.
Exactly.
But, working with counselor and friends and others to say like, here's how I view the world. Here's like learned patterns, and you can go into all the psychological part of it, and the DNA, but here's how I see the world. And there's some great stuff to that, but it's just one slice. And how can I see it differently? And then that's really hard.
So hard.
Because I'm so used to my lens.
There's such a good image in, it's a book called Fierce Conversations. I think, who's the author? I can't remember now. Fierce Conversations, but she gives the image of a beach ball. And she said, I'm on one side of the beach ball. I can see the red and the white. That's all I can see. You're on the other side. You see the blue and the green. And we have so much trouble understanding that there's more than what we see. And I think that's part of the falling upward thing, realizing other people see another side of this beach ball. How can I understand what I'm missing? How can I challenge my own
what a good analogy.
Perspective here?
Yeah, you've probably done this. I remember doing some leadership classes where they give you Myers-Briggs or DISC or, I think it was the Golden, but one of those. And, I don't know, there's 50 people in the room or something. And then they start breaking you up by your like-mindedness in the room. And seeing like best friends at the opposite corner, and you're like, oh my gosh, like that's why you think that way. I just thought you whatever, like
totally.
I just thought you were wrong. But in fact, you process the world in a totally different way and actually kind of a predictable way. And there's other people like you that think like this.
Yes.
And it's just mind blowing.
Yeah.
You're like, oh my, I'm just one perspective.
Right.
On a chart, really.
Exactly. I just did the predictive index assessment with my team earlier this week. I'll send it to you actually after this.
Okay.
So, because I'm curious where you stand, but it assesses drives and motivations. So drives create needs and behaviors. So we can sort of understand or predict behaviors based on your needs and your drives. But it's a drive for there's 4 different indicators, and one of them is kind of a scale of like extroversion, one of it's a scale of dominance, one's of, and I'm going to mess it up now because it's not in front of me, but something having to do with like patience. And then what's the 4th factor? I can't remember what the 4th factor is. But anyway, it's fascinating to see. And as I was going, doing this with my team, some of the people are newer and had everybody's results, and we discussed them, and it was a great workshop to get to know each other better. But when you see these things in other people and yourself, where it's like, oh, that's why. That's why this person needs to be told in advance that here's what we're going to talk about, and here are your step 1, 2, 3 requests, and by Tuesday, and here's why this person wants just the goal to be shared. Don't tell me how to do it. Tell me when it's due. And then don't, micromanage over my back. It's like we have different needs and desires.
Yeah, it creates empathy.
Yeah, it creates empathy. Yeah, this isn't just you being difficult.
Right.
or you being dominant. It's like, this is your wiring.
Yeah. Which, without going down the rabbit trail of politics, but which is like
I'll go down it.
Yeah, I know.
But let's not record that conversation.
Right. But at a high level, it's like that's so much of what's missing is just empathy. And that I think it's like so much on both sides is driven by fear. Fear of losing, fear of a way of life changing, fear of going too fast, fear of going too slow. It's just, and it's like if you dig beneath all the theater, it's like, well, one, a lot of it's driven by fear and people are just afraid, but then typically in me, that then creates empathy of like, oh, gosh, I don't want anybody to be afraid.
Yeah.
I understand that, at some level, a human level.
To understand that Albert Brooks, I saw him speak about a year ago. He was at Trinity Church.
Albert? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Albert Brooks on his book, what was it called? It's the latest one. I'll think of it. But he was talking about trying to understand the other side as we both are anchored in values.
Yeah.
And sometimes these values seem at odds, but if we can understand that the other isn't valueless and stoke the fear of that, understanding like we're coming at this issue with different values.
Yeah.
Or differently articulated value. We both have values, and I'm coming at this, something like guns. Someone's coming at it with a value of freedom.
Yeah.
And someone's coming out with a value of safety.
Yeah.
So those are noble things to care about.
Right.
And you can dissect any issue like that. And I think it really helps to understand and not demonize the other. When I'm like, what is the value that's driving this point of view?
Yeah. That's beautiful.
What was that book called?
We should do more of that.
I need to look it up. I know. Exactly. It's a good thought exercise. Even like in a marriage, if you're having to make a decision and coming at something from different places, it's usually different great values, like both good things. But what are we going to prioritize? Yeah,
and then informed by like the stories in our head, the stories that help us make sense of the world, how we, grew up and were shaped and formed. Mm-hmm. It's interesting, like unpacking, those stories that often our parents tell us, and some are great. I mean, it's not, it's out of a good place. But I'm like, I don't know if that story was the best story I should have been told.
Right.
So I think humility, and the other one I'd say is courage.
How so?
So I mentioned this the other day, but I've seen several studies now where they ask people at the end of their life, like, what do they regret? And the common theme seems to be not taking more risk. And so, well, to your point, we are still in the first half of life, let's hope. As I look into the second half, like, all right, what things should I be taking risk on?
What comes to mind?
Well, obviously what we're doing now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is a great...
I'm not a professional podcaster.
You have me fooled. I mean, you're...
But it's like, I think I'd really enjoy doing this.
Yeah.
And I've got all these really smart, talented friends.
Yeah.
Like, let's give it a shot.
Yeah.
Certainly running my own business.
That feels tremendous.
Having 4 kids.
2020, that feels like a risk.
Right.
Y'all going to Colorado?
Yeah. Yeah, moving to another place.
Yeah.
But it's like, gosh, I want to, and I am a calculated person, so I'm not, mine are like calculated risk. But I'm trying of like, what are the things that I should push into that I might regret?
And that's what people regret. Talk about deathbed wisdom.
Right.
It's not doing the thing.
Not trying.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, I've now lived 46 years. There's like some sense of, like taking a huge risk at 20 feels riskier in a sense.
because now, I mean, you've got Mark D. He's probably your financial advisor. You've got your
Right.
ducks in a row.
Right.
You've got a retirement fund. You've got like,
Well, and it's like,
it feels like you have a little bit more. You should have.
I've traveled a lot of miles now.
Yeah,
and I've like knocked a lot of things down. Not that I'm done, hopefully, but yet I don't know. It feels less risky to try, which maybe is the paradox.
Besides the podcast, what would be one of those things that to you would feel like?
Oh gosh, like
really
a fun one was
out.
last year I wanted to go learn how to sail.
Oh
and
yeah,
I ended up not doing it, and some of my friends did, and
and now
that was a bad decision. Now they're sailing around the world, and it's like I'd like to take my family to do that.
Yeah.
So I mean that's a fun one. Certainly a lot of business risk, but idea risk of like challenging some status quo stuff.
How do you do that?
To be candid, I think some in the area of faith.
Yeah.
As you know, like that's a lot of my professional life.
Yeah.
Which I'm super grateful for. It's a great field to work in. Of course, you see flat sides too, and I think out of that flat side, I think it's from a good motivation in place of like, faith has meant so much to me. I want more people to experience that. I wonder if we're in the best iteration of it now. I think we're not. I mean,
I hope not. I hope not.
Yeah. And so, what could a different iteration look like?
Yeah.
While still, honoring the core. Listen, now there's a lot of people saying this, that a lot of people are saying there's some stuff broken. And we're broken people, so there'll always be. But yeah, I mean, having spent my career in the professional faith field, I've got some thoughts.
Yeah. Are you going to write a book? Is that ever?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I want to honor those who've, put their trust in me, and I think it would be tweaks, but then I also have this heart for so many people who I think have written faith off because of how it's being presented.
It's not.
And I'm like, I think I could talk to you in a different way.
And what a gift to be able to do
where
that.
Maybe it would connect. But anyway, so I think a lot about that, and that feels risky because, there's a lot of strongly held opinions.
Yes.
Politics and faith, right?
Yeah.
Or religions.
Things
like
you shouldn't talk about.
What you don't talk about. So what about you? Where do you feel like the biggest areas of risk are for you now? If there are any.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a low risk season, but.
Risk, as much as I've said I love my job, I always feel like there's a tension being a mom, working mom.
Yeah.
And living into that tension. So it feels risky to pursue professional success sometimes. And how do you even define success? Blah, blah, blah. But what, to pursue that in a way that still honors my first love, which is my family. So that always feels just like a tension as a working mom. And fortunately, I feel like I'm in a really lucky place with that, where I really feel like I'm able to balance
both
the scales, yes, on that. But that feels like a risk. And then, like what you're saying with faith, you're in branding. I just feel like the brand that I'm we are associated with as Christians now. Sometimes I'm like, no, that's not all of us.
Yeah.
No. But
yeah.
So I want to do a little like PR crisis control on that, but like relationally.
Right.
And like you, I feel like I could speak to people who are turned off by that, what they see as not the love piece of, not the attractiveness. What do they say? Like, we need to be in sales, not management, as Christians.
Right.
And
I haven't heard that. That's good.
We're forgetting the sales piece. Like, why is this good? Why is this attractive? Why is this a more joyful, more fulfilling, better way.
Yeah.
We're in the management.
Yeah.
And like, but no, there should be a Bible in the classroom. I'm like, in Florida or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's like, that's not our business. Like we need to be in the relation piece and the love piece, and doing a better job selling this, not trying to scare people into this. So when I think about risk taking, I would love to be able to have time, make time really for participating in some of the programs at church, like Alpha, where I feel like it is open to the curious. And that's where I just think there's so much richness there for conversation, for me to learn, for the Holy Spirit.
Yeah. Curiosity.
Yeah, curiosity.
That's a humble posture.
Exactly. So hopefully my next chapter, I'll make space for that, because I love those conversations, and have always felt if you have to choose like a lane for ministry, like to me, it's not the people who are already sold out. It's the people who maybe had it once and have lost it.
I agree. I mean, that's where my heart is.
Yeah, that's kind of where my heart is.
Yeah. Either that or just people who never had it. Yeah, the brands, don't like the brand.
Yeah, who don't like the brand. And I'm like, I get it. I get it.
I want to try to explain this a different way.
Yeah, exactly. Let me do a better job here.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, I want to honor your time, so we can bring it to an end. But one thing I ask is, what's a encouragement, challenge, something you'd want to leave folks with?
Challenge. I'm looking up the title real quick. I have to fact check myself before my challenge.
Do it.
I have got to look up the name of that book that I quoted. Arthur Brooks. I said Albert Brooks.
Yeah.
That's where I was wrong.
Okay, that's what I thought.
That's why you had me check. You were like, are you sure? No, I was not sure. Gosh, what is that book? Oh, it's called Love Your Enemies.
How appropriate.
Yeah, how appropriate. That's perfect. So Arthur Brooks, the book Love Your Enemies.
Wow, I didn't.
And then I'm pretty sure.
Let
Let me fact check my Fierce Conversations.
Yeah.
I think it's Collins. Let me text my. Let me.
We need that third party in the room with the internet who's like looking all this stuff up. So smart.
Susan Scott. Okay.
That's multipliers.
That's Fierce Conversations.
Oh, Fierce
Multipliers
Conversations.
is Liz Wiseman. So that's
I've got so
the
many good
reading
books
list.
to read.
As do I.
You should publish a reading list.
Yeah. So the question was like a challenge, or
It's something you'd want to leave for the audience. So an encouragement, a challenge.
I would say
something.
Stay curious.
Yeah.
And that's a message to myself too. I think that's like about other people, about myself, about God, about the world, about people who see a different color of the beach ball and have different life experiences. Stay curious.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for coming on,
This was
sharing
so
your
fun.
time.
Thank you.